Well, here we are at Paranella Park. We're just here for one night, and pretty sure shortly we'll go down to the reception and see what tours we can do. Of course, included in the camping, on-site camping, is a guided tour for half an hour through the castle, etc. This is the edge of Paranella Park, and we can just see a glimpse of some of the castle. And now we're looking at the reception area. Joe Paranella's dream and set back in the 1930s. Paranella Park, that's the front entry.
Here we are at Paranella Park, just waiting for the guide to come and
Do the 12 o'clock tour.
12 o'clock tour. So yeah, so it's a couple of minutes to 12. We've got our turtle food ready.
Is that turtle food? I thought it was fish food.
Both. Fish. Yeah.
Nice smoking and guided tours.
Well, thank you.
Gabby, I'll be your tour guide today. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the original custodians of the land we are meeting on, and we pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging. I'll be with you for about 30 minutes, and in this time I'll tell you the story of Jose Paranella. Few things to be aware of before we go. Please watch your step. There is lots of uneven surfaces, loose gravel and tree roots throughout the pathway. We are eco certified and heritage listed, meaning if you come across any plants or animals, please do not touch or remove them from the path. And please respect the ruins by not sitting or leaning on them, as they are quite unstable and they might collapse. Alright, let's get going. It's very quick to show you our hydro board. This board explains the hydroelectric system that Jose installed in the park in 1933. He was a man well ahead of his time, about 20 to 25 years, as he created and privately owned the first river-driven hydroelectric generator in Queensland, while the rest of the area did not get electricity until 1954 onwards. This generator allowed Jose to make his park magical, with extravagant lights lighting up pathways and the waterfall, refrigeration, hot water, and other luxuries I'll mention in my tour. The hydro system became out of order in the mid-60s, as it was not being used or maintained. Our current owners wanted to get it restored, so in 2008 they sent it off to Germany at a cost of $400,000. It was returned a year later, and it's still being used in the park today. If anyone's coming back tonight to do our light show, the lights are powered by the hydro generator, which is pretty cool. If you're interested, have a read later, but we'll move on. Let me begin the story of Jose Paranella. Jose was born in Catalonia, north of Spain in 1887. He was the youngest of 6 children, born into a working class family. While his parents were out working in olive fields, Jose's grandmother often looked after the children, and she would tell them many stories about castles, knights and nobles. These stories inspired Jose, and his dream was to one day build castles of his very own. At age 14, Jose left school to become a pastry chef. He did this for about 10 years, but he wasn't very happy with his life. He had heard that men from Spain were making good money here in Australia, which he became interested in. So he wrote a letter home to his parents, telling them he was setting sail. And off he went at age 25 he sailed to Sydney in 1913, made his way up to far north Queensland in 1914, where his very first job was a cane cutter. Now this was very hard work back then, as there was no machinery. They were cutting cane by hand. Now Jose wanted to buy his own farm, but he did not have enough money to do so. However, the government was selling cheap blocks of land with intentions of turning them into farmlands. Jose purchased one of these, cleared the land, got the soil ready and planted crops, and sold that farm for a large profit. Over the next 10 years, he did this 11 more times. So by age 34, he was very well respected and very wealthy. Now Jose thought it was time to return to Catalonia, as before leaving, he was arranged to marry a girl named Matilda. He wrote to her before leaving saying he would be back for her once he could provide for our family. But for the 12 years that Jose was in Australia, he never sent her a single letter. Both families thought something tragic had happened and they moved on with their lives. So when Jose arrived, knocked on her door, he found she had already married and had a small child. There was much embarrassment between both families. However, Matilda's mother had the quick solution. Jose would marry her younger sister, Margarita. Margarita was 14 years younger than Jose, but she was happy to marry as he was successful, wealthy, and handsome. What more could she want?
Yeah.
After they got married, they went on a 7-month honeymoon through Europe, where Jose told Margarita all about his plans to return to far north Queensland and build European pleasure gardens in the rainforest, which he was inspired by, as during their travels they visited many botanical gardens and pleasure parks. Jose and Margarita returned to far north Queensland in 1926 and started looking for land to build their park on. One day, when Jose was traveling across that front road, which you all came down on, that used to be the main Bruce Highway, he came across the waterfall, creek, and this rainforest. At the time, this property was owned by a farmer, but the land was unsuitable for planting crops. Jose visited this farmer 3 years later, purchased this property at the cheap price of £120. He set to work clearing the land, and the first building he built was this cottage. It was the Paranella family home, and it took Jose only 3 months to build. They moved in on Christmas Day. The cottage is now our museum, so be sure to check that out later. Lots of interesting things inside. Let's move on. We call this building the Top Castle. This was the original entrance to the park. Below was a cafe, and since Jose had the first electricity, he also had the first refrigeration in this area. So they purchased an ice cream maker machine and had the first ice cream parlor, which was very popular, especially with the children. They would walk miles just to have some ice cream for the first time here. In those rooms above was Jose's museum, where he had collections of coins, guns, dolls, postcards, butterflies, etc. And he charged just a small fee for people to view. Now, at the time when Jose started building his park, he wanted to save time and money. He used whatever he could find for free or from his own land, such as water, sand, clay, and rock, framework from abandoned houses, and the steel reinforcements were old discarded railway rails. Cement powder was imported from Germany and roofing iron from England. But Jose did make one major error. He did not realize at the time the sand from that creek contained a high level of mica. Mica is a mineral that does not bond well with concrete mixture, allowing moisture to soak in. And as you may know, it rains a lot up here, so those railway lines have rusted, expanding and cracking the concrete from the inside. Hence why the buildings look like ruins. Jose finished and opened his park in 1935. Next we'll head into the ballroom, which is connected to this castle. So this was Jose's grand ballroom. You'll find a photo of it in the guides I handed out earlier, which shows that it once used to look very grand. You can imagine black beam polished timber flooring, windows on both sides, curtains with blue velvet drapes. The stage had a mural of a castle in the background with large timber framework with red velvet curtains with gold edges. The stage was covered in royal blue tiles, which you can still see some of today. Now Jose's proudest thing in his ballroom was of course his mirror ball, made especially for him and imported from America at a cost of £600. That's 50,000 today. The original hung in the center of the ballroom, and you can imagine colored lights reflecting all around people dancing was quite magical. And yes, of course, that's not the original. The original was also larger, I was told. Jose also turned this room into a movie theater. That large back window housed the projector, where he would get a hold of feature films, newsreels, or make movies of the park. The light reflected onto a large white curtain placed on the backstage, and deck chairs were placed for seating. Weddings and functions were also held in this room, right up until 1979, when a fire broke out in that kitchen after a wedding, which destroyed everything inside the building. We have also had 2 Category 5 cyclones, Larry in 2006 and Yasi in 2011, which did more damage to the structures here, including the missing wall and missing roof. You'll notice we do have repairs happening in some of the buildings. That is to help preserve them for generations to come. Next we'll be heading down the grand staircase of 47 steps. Everyone is okay to do those? The staircase was the very first structure that Jose built, as he needed a way to get his building materials from bottom level to the top to build his home. So imagine doing these steps many times a day, carrying heavy buckets. He was very fit. Alright guys, we'll head there now. So this is a perfect example of how mica destroys the concrete. When it's been raining lots, water constantly drips through and it's always very wet and yeah, doesn't look very nice. If you are wondering why the ceiling is quite low, that's because Jose was not very tall. You just fit. Okay guys, please watch your step heading down.
Story of my life.
Yeah, I don't have any
Oh, mackerel with the steep.
Today's picnic area. A couple weeks ago we had so much rain that it was almost completely underwater. There's videos on our Facebook page. Back in the day it was very popular amongst the people. They'd come for a swim, a picnic, or just lays around. Jose also had rowboats available, where couples would go for a romantic row around the creek and falls. During World War II, there were about 250,000 soldiers up here, and many of them were coming down to the park for some fun, as there was all sorts of activities. Now on that staircase, you'll notice there are some plaques. These are flood level markers. The very top one is from 1946, caused by a flood, which created a dam of logs and debris upstream at a railway bridge where farmers had been logging. Jose witnessed the waterfall stop in silence for about an hour before that railway bridge eventually gave in, and with it, a tsunami of water, logs and debris destroyed Jose's dream in minutes. He was devastated. The park had to close for 6 months for repairs. To put in perspective, the water rised all the way to just below the windows in the ballroom. We would have been waist deep in water. It then dropped to that level on the staircase. Now we no longer recommend swimming in the creek, of course due to the crocodiles that can make their way in there. And they have been spotted before, apparently. So I wouldn't risk it. Alright guys, we'll head this way. So this building here was the old toilet block. Or as we like to say, toilet castle. Jose designed all of his buildings to have those same castle features, even the toilets. Over here we have our Queensland Cowie trees. They're native to North Queensland and they're also found on Fraser Island. They can take around 300 years to grow full size, and their trunks can be anywhere between 2.5 to 4 meters in diameter, so they're not yet fully grown. In the early 1800s, they were so heavily logged for their beautiful timber that the forestry department became concerned for their population. They gifted Jose these trees for preservation in the promise he never cut them down or sell them for profit. So the first thing he did was create this lovely avenue. And you'll notice he's lined it up perfectly to frame the waterfall. This building, the lower refreshment rooms, but it was the cafe by the pool. There's 10 change rooms on each side, where people will get changed after having a swim. Cafe during the day, and a fine dining restaurant at night, where you had to be appropriately dressed to enter. Men in suits and ladies in gowns or long dresses. Top 2 levels also had tables and chairs. And that small building to the right was Margarita's kitchen. It was fully enclosed, and that's where all food was prepared. On top was the bandstand, where musicians would play live music. Now the cafe also provided a service down to the picnic area. Unfortunately, it didn't operate for very long due to the flood I mentioned in 1946, which destroyed that building beyond repair. Now that fountain was not originally here, or those seats of course. This was Jose's sporting section. Lawn bowls and bocce played up that side, and this side had 2 full-size tennis courts, which he made out of crushed up termite mounds, rolled out with that very heavy concrete roller over there. The first tennis club in the district was right here at Paranella Park. Now by this time, Jose and Margarita had 2 children. Firstborn, a daughter named Teresa, and a second son, Joe. And it was Joe who built that fountain as a memorial to his father. It is gravity fed from the waterfall, so no pumps are needed. Very clever. Now Jose still had more plans for building his park, but sadly in 1948, he passed away from stomach cancer at age 60. Teresa had already married and moved to Brisbane, so this left Margarita and son Joe to run the park. They did very well for the next 14 years, up until the mid-60s, when that Bruce Highway was moved to where it is now, which slowed down their business, diverting traffic away from their front gates. Margarita saw this as an opportunity to visit her family back in Spain, but she also wanted to honor Jose by visiting their honeymoon spots through Europe. But sadly, while she was in Scotland, 2 stops before she reached home, she suffered a fatal heart attack, which took her life at age 64. Her body was brought back here to be laid to rest with Jose at the Innisfail Cemetery. This left son Joe, his wife Val, and their 2 young boys, Joe Jr. and Kerry, to run the park. They were doing well, and the park became busy again. However, one day while out in the gardens, 5 years after his mother passed away, Joe also suffered a fatal heart attack, which took his life at the young age of 39. This left Val and her 2 children with the park. She knew how important it was to Jose and her husband, and she did her very best to keep it running. But after 4 years, it became too overwhelming for her, so she contacted Teresa, and they made that decision to sell the park. New owners bought the park in 1977, but after that fire broke out in the Ballroom 2 years later, they just packed up and abandoned the park. So, this brings us to our current owners, Mark and Judy Evans. They were travelling across Australia in their caravan with their 3 kids. When they arrived in far north Queensland, they asked the real estate agent to find them something interesting to buy. He got back to them and said, "I found you a caravan park near Innisfail. This one has a waterfall and a castle." They were intrigued, came out for a look, and pretty much straight away purchased this property in 1993. They set to work clearing the gardens and buildings up top, and a few weeks after they reopened, they had a surprise visitor at the gates. She introduced herself as Teresa Zalotti, maiden name Paranella. It was thanks to her friendship over the years that we learnt the whole story about Jose and his park. She took Mark and Judy for tours into the gardens to show them all the pathways that were covered by rainforest, which Mark and Judy uncovered. They became very good friends right up until 2008, when Teresa passed away at age 81. Now, I've only told you a small part of the story, but So this is Lover's Lane. You'll notice the pathway is a bit wider. That is so couples can walk down holding hands. How romantic. That building at the end is the entrance to the Tunnel of Love, which took Jose 5.5 years to dig out, and that is where he obtained the clay he used in his buildings. Now, while digging out that tunnel, Jose had the idea to turn it into an underground aquarium. He dug large holes in each side of the walls for the fish tanks. Unfortunately, due to the mica in the concrete, fish tanks did not hold water, so it never got used for that. Instead, Margarita used it for growing mushrooms, which she used in her kitchen. The Tunnel of Love was adults only. No children were allowed inside or out to the secret gardens. Unfortunately, we can't go through the tunnel anymore as it is unsafe, and we have many tiny residents living inside. These are microbats. They're great to have around as they can eat half their body weight in insects, including the pesky mosquitoes. The tunnel leads out to the secret gardens and Teresa Falls, which is a spring-fed waterfall Jose named after his daughter, as when he discovered the big waterfall was named after somebody else's daughter, Mina, he made a small replica and named it Teresa Falls. What a great dad. Now please don't drink the water, we haven't tested it. To get to that area, since we can't go through the tunnel, if you follow the path ahead and turn left at a staircase that leads to the bamboo walk, following that path around the left takes you to the gardens and the falls. This brings us to the end of my tour. On behalf of Mark and Judy, we thank you guys so much for your support. It is what keeps the park alive.
So this is the other end of the Lovers Tunnel. And here's the hidden garden, Teresa Falls. Little bridges across it. You can stand on and propose and that sort of thing. He's a romantic, wasn't he? He must have built this little creek as well.
That man didn't sleep at all. I know.
He did a lot of work.
Oh.
Little fish in it. Little fish.
Down Lover's Lane. Little fish in there.
The water rushing underneath this little bridge.
Made all these by hand.
It's a shame the sand he used was the wrong stuff. And the bridge.
What if you walking up the stairs?
That's just amazing.
Everything's about this stuff.
This is a different bridge, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not the same one that we came up.
Oh, I think we came across it and went that way, didn't we?
No, it's different. Because it doesn't say to the Teresa Falls.
There's pathways everywhere.
Yeah, there's another one
Look, there's
there.
another bridge there. As well as this one.
There's another one just there. Yeah. Do you want to go this way?
8 bridges that span Teresa Creek. Regularly covered by floodwaters in the wet season.
It's amazing. But even the pathways are not to be. Look at that. The size of the face.
Holy mackerel. I can't believe the pathways that are around here. There's trucks everywhere. We're going to look out. This looks at the waterfall, I think. They're fish. There's an eel there, and there's turtles out here.
Oh my god.
There's turtles everywhere.
There's so many.
Oh, there's a turtle.
Oh, look at them all.
Yeah,
Look at
it's
them
like
all.
once you see one, you just start seeing like endless amounts.
See them brown? Oh, there's two.
Oh my goodness.
The turtle.
Oh, look at them.
Look at that one.
Oh, look, he's stuck on there, look.
The thingy.
So there's one coming out.
Look, that one looks like he's stuck. Oh my god, it's so cute.
You got all over your
Weirdest
phone.
like animal sighting thing I feel.
Pet them.
So this is Mr. and Mrs. Pinky walking back up the Cowie Avenue.
Social distancing, hand in hand.
The paths have all been made double width here as it is a romantic place to get away.
Here comes the lovely couple. Disappointed Alistair hasn't got his Pinky shirt on though.
He does have his pinky shirt on.
So,
Tiny are
they were small, weren't they? Changing cubicles.
Especially if there were two of them in there.
Well, you wouldn't be two, that wouldn't be proper.
Not back in
There's
there.
quite a lot of them, isn't there?
Carry the sand up by himself. Right. Fit little turkey. This is a running upstairs. That's the front level there. Yeah.
Yeah. 1946, like that's.
Yeah, that's because it just all came at once.
I can't move my legs. We did this many times a day.
Grand staircase.
No, back to the sand. All the concrete at the top.
We molded 500.
This is the hydroelectric generator, and it's producing 13 kilowatts at about 12 volts. Generator connected. So this was their home, and it's now the museum. Lots of stuff, waterfalls in full roar.
That is Mean Creek Falls.
Lots of old photographs when it was in its glory. Look at the tennis courts.
Yeah.
And there he is singing.
How did he find time to sing or do anything? Yeah. Yes.
Salvo and Benito Saltaris with Jose,
Which set?
1923.
That's it there, isn't it? That's it where we go down the bottom.
Yeah, when we were down the bottom. Yeah.
Cottage.
Because there's a tennis court. And that's where they put that ballroom in. Yeah. But look at this. How that is. Yeah. So that's this room you're in. Yep.
Wow, he got his own projection gear to show movies. Look at that, he had his own projector.
Yes, because he put he projected onto the back wall of the theatre.
Yeah,
So this was the old way in. And it took you through to that first castle. But you can't get through now. Look, yeah, steps are uneven.
but look, all these railings.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, it's a bit bouncy. Is that you, Bruce? Oh. You're making it bounce. Bruce, he's jumping up and down, isn't he?
I'm thinking I have got to hang on really tight to just
That's the picnic area down there. Oh.
Well, we're lucky with the weather.
Right, we're doing the night tour of Paranella Park.
It's the light tour, isn't it?
Light tour.
The light
light tour, night tour.
Yeah.
So we'll see what we get.
Welcome back everyone here to the Grand Ballroom. Now you're more than welcome to take as many photos or videos here tonight, but I do recommend turning the flash off. as you'll get much better quality photos here this evening. So do take a moment to do that for me. Now, I'm hoping everyone here today has done, the history tour and know all about Jose Paranella. Of course, he's the man of the hour. But his daughter Teresa, she came here in 1994 and brought the park back to life for us through the storytelling of her very own childhood memories here. But the star of the show tonight, of course, like Mark said, is actually the hydroelectricity system Jose Paranella built here in the year of 1933. He actually popped a light down on that waterfall. I think that was a bit of showing off here in the 30s, just to remind people that, hey, I've actually done it. So tonight, we've actually got a light down there as well, in honour of Jose's memory and to be showing off a little bit as well, I guess. But not just that, I do hope you keep that in mind, that, here in the 30s, your own home would have been lit up by some candlelight. But just down the road, Jose Paranella had his waterfall lit up like a Christmas tree too. I think we can all agree being pretty blown away and very envious of Jose all at the same time. Now please come forward.
No, don't. We've got the camera.
So where are we going?
We're doing the night tour of Paranella.
Paranella?
Parallel Park.
Parallel Park. What is it?
Paranella.
Paranella Park.
So
We're doing the night tour of Parallel Park.
you said it wrong again.
No, you do it.
Right, we're doing.